I hadn't planned to stay the night. Definitely not like that. Tyler had invited a bunch of us over to his place for a weekend hang, one of those laid-back, suburban backyard barbecue things his family always threw. His mom was out of town visiting her sister, and he said his dad was cool with us taking over the house for the night. I figured I'd stay for food, maybe a couple beers, then drive home. That was the plan. But then I lost my keys. I tore apart the back patio, the kitchen, even Tyler's stupid garage gym setup, and they were just gone. I must have dropped them outside, and by the time we realized it, the neighborhood was dark, the wind had picked up, and it felt like a storm was about to roll in. Not exactly ideal conditions for walking home or calling a tow. Tyler was already half asleep in a lawn chair, wrapped in a hoodie, and muttered something about just crashing here. He offered his bed and said he'd take the couch, which sounded great, until I actually went upstairs and found someone else already in the room. His dad, Mr. Mason. The man was sitting on the edge of the bed in a t-shirt and athletic shorts, holding his phone, and clearly just as surprised to see me standing there. "Oh," he said, standing quickly. "Didn't realize you were staying over." "Yeah, sorry," I stammered. "Lost my keys," and Tyler said, "Bed's free." Mr. Mason scratched the back of his neck, then glanced toward the hallway. Ty said I could take his room too. I was just grabbing something. "But it's fine. I can sleep in the guest room." I stepped aside, awkward, already half backpedaling. "No, I don't want to kick you out. Seriously, I can take the couch." "No way," he said, shaking his head. "That couch is older than Tyler. You'd wake up with 3 slipped discs." I laughed awkwardly. "I mean," he continued, "unless you're cool sharing. Bed's big. I don't snore." That last line was said with a grin that made me feel like I was suddenly 16 again. I must have looked like a deer in headlights because he added, "Or we can rock, paper, scissors for it." I laughed again, this time a little more genuinely. "Nah, if you're cool with it, I'm cool with it." So that's how I ended up in bed with my best friend's dad. It was one of those big, king-size setups, but it still felt really close. I lay stiffly on the right side, staring up at the ceiling, trying to make sense of how this became my Saturday night. Tyler was snoring downstairs. My phone was nearly dead, and next to me, maybe 2 feet away, if that, was Mr. Mason, shirt off now, just bare shoulders and toned arms, shifting under the covers like he was completely unbothered. I kept telling myself it wasn't a big deal, but it kinda was, because I'd always noticed him. You couldn't not. He was one of those dads who aged really well. Salt and pepper hair, scruffy jawline, shoulders like he still worked out daily. He had this quiet confidence, the kind that made him feel solid, safe, but also slightly intimidating, like he could read you with one look. And now here I was, lying next to him in the dark. "You good?" he asked suddenly. His voice startled me, deep, calm, too close. Yeah, I said quickly, just still kind of processing the whole key situation. He let out a soft laugh. "Could be worse. At least you're not sleeping on that couch." I chuckled. "True." There was a pause. Then, "You're always polite, you know that?" That caught me off guard. Huh? Tyler's friends are usually loud, messy, kind of inconsiderate. You're not? I shifted slightly, trying to play it off. "Guess I'm just a boring guest." "Nah," he said. "Just different." That word hung in the air. Different. He didn't elaborate. Just let it settle there. The rain started not long after. Soft at first, then harder. The kind that made the house creak and the windows rattle a little. It was oddly soothing. Or maybe that was just my brain trying to distract me from the fact that I was very aware of every breath Mr. Mason took beside me, every shift under the blanket, every subtle sound in the dark. And then he turned toward me. Not all the way, but enough that I felt the mattress shift, felt the heat of his body just inches from mine. "You cold?" he asked, voice low now. I wasn't. Not really, but I nodded anyway. He didn't say anything else, just lifted a corner of the blanket higher, like an unspoken invitation. I moved closer. And that's when everything changed. It wasn't supposed to feel like that. Warm, charged, like electricity in the space between two magnets. I inched under the blanket a little more, settling closer to the middle of the bed, but still keeping enough distance to not make it obvious. Mr. Mason didn't move. Didn't say anything, but I could tell he noticed. There was a shift in the air, almost like we both became hyper-aware of the silence. I tried to play it cool, just rest my head, close my eyes, pretend like I wasn't fully awake and buzzing with nerves. But my body was humming. I couldn't relax. I couldn't stop noticing the way the mattress subtly dipped toward him, how his breaths were slow and measured, how the rain kept tapping the windows like it was trying to fill in all the empty space between our words. "Can't sleep?" he asked after a few minutes. I opened my eyes again. "Not really." "Storm?" "Yeah, that and the whole day's just been weird." "I didn't say because I'm lying next to you." "But I thought it." Mr. Mason shifted slightly, just enough to prop himself up on one elbow. He looked over at me through the low glow of light spilling in from the hallway. His face was partially shadowed, but I could see the lines at the corners of his eyes, the kind that only came with age and time and a lot of lived-in experience. He didn't look uncomfortable, just thoughtful. "You ever stay up thinking too much?" he asked. I huffed a quiet laugh. "All the time." He nodded like he knew exactly what I meant. "Sometimes I think the quiet's the problem. Gives you too much room to think." His voice had softened again, dipped into something quieter, something personal. "What do you think about?" I asked, before I could stop myself. He looked over at me, then back at the ceiling. "Mistakes. Things I didn't say. Things I should have said." I swallowed. I didn't expect that answer. I didn't expect any of this. For a moment, I just watched him. The way his arm curved over the pillow. The slight rise and fall of his chest. There was a comfort in the way he was lying there, open, like he didn't need to perform or pretend. And I realized I'd never really seen him this way. I'd only ever known him as Tyler's dad. But here, in this quiet, he felt like someone else entirely. Then he looked at me again. His gaze lingered a beat too long. "You're different from most of Tyler's friends," he said again, more softly this time. "You don't act like you've got something to prove." I didn't know how to respond to that. Not right away. So I said the first thing that came to mind. "I've never really fit in with guys like him." Mr. Mason didn't break eye contact. I can tell. That made my heart skip, not in a bad way, in a someone sees you and doesn't look away kind of way. I tried to laugh it off. "Is that a good thing?" He didn't smile. Not right away. But his eyes softened. "Yeah," he said. "It is." Then, without breaking eye contact, he reached up and adjusted the blanket slightly over my shoulder, fingers grazing my arm. It was quick. Light. But it sent a rush down my spine that I couldn't ignore. I didn't move. Neither did he. And in the thick of that silence, I could feel something shifting. Something subtle but heavy. Like we were both leaning over the edge of something we hadn't acknowledged yet. "You sure you're warm enough?" he asked, barely above a whisper. I nodded, but I didn't pull away. And that's when I felt it. His hand still hovering near my arm. Not quite touching anymore, but close. Close enough that if I shifted even slightly, we'd be brushing against each other. And I did. Just enough. And he didn't move away. He didn't move his hand when I shifted. If anything, he moved closer. Subtle, barely an inch, but enough that our arms were now touching under the blanket. Skin to skin. His forearm was warm, solid, just resting against mine. And neither of us said a word. I wasn't sure if this was a mistake, if I was imagining the tension, or if he even realized what he was doing. But something told me he did. We lay there in the dark for what felt like forever, not speaking, just sharing space. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty but full, buzzing with everything left unsaid. Then he shifted again, not away, closer. His hand, slow, deliberate, rested lightly on my forearm. Still no words. He didn't look at me. Just kept his gaze fixed upward, like if he didn't say anything, it didn't count. My heart was pounding now. I wasn't scared, but I was locked in that moment, half frozen, half leaning in, wondering what this meant, wondering if I should say something, if I should do something. "I haven't shared a bed with anyone in a long time," he said, his voice quiet, almost like he was talking to himself. "Me neither," I replied, barely louder than a breath. He turned his head toward me then. His eyes met mine, soft and unreadable. And then, with a sort of quiet certainty, he said, "Does this feel strange to you?" I could have lied. Could have played it off. Could have pulled away and laughed and pretended none of this was happening. But I didn't. "Yeah," I said, but not in a bad way. He nodded slowly, like he needed to hear that, like he'd been waiting for me to say it before letting himself go any further. Then his thumb moved. Just slightly. A soft, slow stroke across my skin. That tiny gesture made me feel like my body had been set on fire. Not in a dramatic way, but in that warm, aching way you feel when someone finally touches you like they mean it. Like they've wanted to. I didn't move away, I didn't say stop. His hand trailed upward, feather-light, until it reached my wrist. He paused there, thumb circling just beneath the bend. Then he looked up at me again, searching my face for any sign of resistance. There was none. "You okay?" he asked, voice lower now. "Yeah," I said. He waited another beat, then his hand slid further up, over the edge of the blanket, resting just above my chest. Not groping, not greedy, just there, holding me like he was trying to make sure I was real. And God, did I feel real. We weren't saying anything, but everything was being said in that touch, the kind that didn't rush, that waited to be invited in. My body leaned into his instinctively, not a full shift, just enough to let him know, "I feel this too." And then, finally, he spoke again. "Tyler doesn't need to know about this," he said softly. There wasn't fear in his voice, just reality. "I know," I whispered. "He won't." He exhaled, and it felt like he'd been holding that breath for hours. And that's when he closed the space between us. He didn't kiss me, not yet, but his face moved in, his forehead gently resting against mine. Our breaths mingled, soft and shallow. His hand moved again, sliding behind my back, pulling me just a little closer, our bodies almost fully pressed together under the blanket. No words, just heat, and tension, and breath. And whatever this was, it wasn't just about sleeping next to someone. It was about being seen, wanted. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to run from that feeling. I could hear everything, his breathing, steady and deep, the rain outside, growing softer now, the way the mattress creaked ever so slightly as he pulled me in closer. Mr. Mason wasn't rushing anything, and maybe that's what made it feel so intense. It wasn't frantic, it wasn't impulsive, it was intentional. His arm wrapped around my back, hand flat against my side, holding me like he was afraid I might back away. But I didn't. I let myself sink into the warmth of his chest, into the curve of his body against mine. Our legs brushed. I felt his breath on my temple. And still, we didn't say anything, because we didn't need to. I think he knew I wasn't going to stop this. And I think I knew he didn't want to. "You okay?" he murmured again, his voice barely audible. I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. My forehead was still pressed lightly to his, and we were so close now that even the smallest movement felt amplified. A twitch of his hand on my side made my breath hitch. A shift in his hips had my stomach tightening. And then, finally, his lips brushed my temple. Not a kiss, not quite. More like a test. I didn't flinch, so he did it again, this time lower, his mouth grazing the corner of my jaw. My eyes fluttered shut. His stubble scratched lightly against my skin, grounding me in this moment, this impossibly unreal yet somehow completely real moment. I tilted my head, just enough to give him space, and that's when he kissed me. slow, careful, like he was asking with every second, "Is this okay?" And the answer was yes. God, yes. It was the kind of kiss that doesn't demand, doesn't assume, just feels. His lips were warm, surprisingly soft, and the way he moved was cautious but confident, like someone who hadn't done this in a long time but still knew how to make it mean something. When we finally broke apart, he didn't pull back far. His eyes searched mine in the dark. "You're sure?" he asked again, and I think that was what undid me, that he kept asking, that he cared enough to ask. "I'm sure," I said, and this time my voice didn't shake. The blanket shifted as he adjusted himself slightly, our bodies now fully aligned. His hand slid under my shirt, not in a rushed way, just resting against my back, skin to skin. The heat of his touch sent a wave of calm and excitement crashing into each other inside me. I didn't know what this was, or what it would mean. But in that moment, I didn't care. All I knew was, I didn't want to be anywhere else. We stayed like that for a long time, not moving much, just touching, occasionally kissing, letting the night stretch out around us like it had nowhere else to be. And I let myself feel it all. The safety of his arm around me, the quiet rhythm of his breath against my neck, the weight of what we weren't saying. It didn't feel wrong. It didn't feel confusing. It just felt like something we were both ready for, even if we hadn't expected it. Eventually, we stopped talking. Our bodies stilled, the rain eased to a soft mist outside, and the house felt impossibly quiet. I don't remember exactly when I fell asleep, only that his hand never left my side. And I didn't want it to. I woke up before he did. For a second, I forgot where I was. The ceiling above me wasn't familiar, and the sheets smelled like cedar and something else I couldn't name. Then I felt the weight of his arm draped over my waist, the warmth of his body pressed against mine from behind, and it all came back. Every moment, every breath. My heart picked up, but not from panic. Just the strange adrenaline of being somewhere you weren't supposed to be, yet not wanting to be anywhere else. Mr. Mason, Mark, I realized I'd never once called him by his first name, was still asleep. His grip was loose but present, his breathing deep and slow. I watched the light creeping in through the blinds, golden and soft. Morning had come too fast. I stared at the ceiling, trying to slow my thoughts. What was this? Was it a one-time thing? Did I want it to be? His hand shifted slightly across my stomach like he was adjusting in his sleep. I glanced over my shoulder. His eyes were still closed, lips parted just slightly. I couldn't believe how calm he looked, like nothing had happened, like everything had happened. I stayed still for a while, not wanting to be the first one to move, not ready to deal with the real world outside the bedroom door. But eventually, I had to get up. I carefully peeled myself away, his arm sliding off my side with a slow drag. He didn't wake, just shifted onto his back with a soft grunt. I grabbed my phone from the floor, tiptoed toward the door, and stepped into the hallway barefoot, my heart still racing. I went straight to the bathroom, shut the door, and just stared at myself in the mirror. I looked the same, but something in my eyes was different, like I knew a secret no one else did. The bathroom felt too quiet. I splashed water on my face, ran a hand through my hair, and tried to piece together what the hell I was supposed to do now. Downstairs, I could hear someone in the kitchen, probably Tyler, finally awake, and that snapped me out of the haze. Tyler, shit, I hadn't even thought about him yet. Hadn't thought about what would happen if he found out that while he was snoring on the couch, I was upstairs wrapped up in something with his dad. Guilt didn't exactly hit, but the anxiety did. Not because I regretted it, but because I knew how complicated this would be. By the time I got back to the room to grab my hoodie, Mark was awake. Sitting up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, blanket still tangled around his waist. "Hey," he said, his voice still heavy with sleep. "Hey," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. There was a pause, then he added, "You good?" I nodded. "Yeah, just wanted to wash my face." He gave a small smile. "Fair, want coffee?" "Yeah," I said before I even thought about it. "I could use some." He stood up, stretched, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. His shirt from the night before was draped over the chair, but he didn't reach for it. Just padded out of the room in those same pajama shorts, like this was any other morning. Like we were just two people, sharing coffee, after sleeping together, in a way. I followed a moment later, nerves buzzing again. Tyler was in the kitchen, barefoot, hair a mess, leaning against the counter with a mug in his hand. He looked up and grinned. "Mornin', you find your keys?" "Not yet," I said, trying to act like my voice wasn't doing weird things. He shrugged. "You can borrow my spare car charger and check outside later. Might have dropped them on the lawn." "Cool, thanks." Mark came into the kitchen right behind me and poured 2 mugs of coffee, handed one to me without a word. Tyler didn't seem to notice the quiet exchange. He was busy scrolling his phone and munching a granola bar. I stood there, sipping slowly, doing everything I could to avoid looking too long at either of them. Especially not both of them together. The contrast between them, Mark's calm, composed energy, and Tyler's restless, chaotic vibe, made my head spin a little. Tyler yawned. "You heading out soon?" I glanced at Mark, who didn't say a thing. "Yeah," I replied. Probably after I checked the lawn. And that's when I felt it. Mark's hand brushing against mine under the counter, just for a second. A touch no one else would see. It said everything we couldn't. Tyler never suspected a thing. If he noticed that I was a little quiet that morning, or that his dad barely said a word while sipping coffee across from me, he didn't mention it. He just threw on some flip-flops, walked out onto the front lawn with me, and helped me check the bushes and the gravel for my lost keys, which, by the way, turned out to be wedged between 2 patio chairs the whole time. Go figure. "You're lucky it didn't rain harder," he said, tossing me the keys. "Could have shorted your fob." "Yeah," I said, catching them one-handed, doing my best to sound normal. Inside, I could still feel the way Mark's fingers had brushed mine by the coffee maker. That single, deliberate touch. Brief, but deliberate. Like a punctuation mark on everything that had happened the night before. And now I was about to walk away from it like it didn't just flip my entire world. By noon, the sky had cleared. The rain had left everything smelling earthy and fresh, like the morning after a secret. I grabbed my hoodie, said a casual goodbye to Tyler, who was already halfway back on the couch, gaming, and headed for the front door. Mark was standing in the doorway of the laundry room when I passed by. We locked eyes. For a second, I thought he might say something, like, "Call me," or even just a simple, "Take care," but he didn't. Instead, he gave me the slightest nod. Like we had a silent agreement not to say more than we needed to, at least not here, not now. I nodded back. Then I left. The ride home felt like I was driving through someone else's life. I kept replaying it all. The way he looked at me, the feel of his hand on my side, the way his voice had gone low in the dark when he asked, "Are you sure?" I didn't know what to make of it. Was it a one-night thing? A random moment of vulnerability? Or was it more? I didn't know if I wanted it to be more, but the thought of it being nothing felt worse. That night, I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, the way he looked at me like he knew something. Like he understood something about me that I hadn't even fully figured out myself. I didn't hear from him the next day, or the day after, and I told myself that was fine. That maybe it was supposed to stay between us. Like a dream. A very real, very complicated dream that I'd eventually file away under things that almost happened. But then, 3 nights later, my phone lit up. An unknown number. I almost ignored it. But then I saw the message. "You left your charger. If you want to come pick it up, I'll be home after 7. No name, no emojis, no punctuation. But I knew exactly who it was. And suddenly, the room felt too quiet, too still. My heart pounded. I stared at the message for a full minute. Then I typed one word back. Okay. I parked down the street on purpose. I told myself it was so Tyler wouldn't see my car in the driveway and come outside. But really, I needed a few extra steps to get my head straight before I saw him, Mark, again. My pulse was erratic. My palms were a little sweaty. And it wasn't just nerves, it was something heavier. anticipation. When I finally walked up to the front door, I hesitated before knocking. It felt surreal to be back here so soon, like I hadn't even fully left that morning. Like my body had gone home, but my mind had stayed in this house, curled under those sheets, memorizing every inch of his presence. The door opened before I could knock. He'd been waiting. "Hey," he said, stepping aside. I stepped in. "Hey." The house was quiet. No sound of Tyler yelling at his game, no TV blaring from the living room. I shot him a quick glance. "Tyler's not here," he said, answering before I even asked. "Went to a friend's place for the night." Oh. That single word came out flatter than I meant it to. Mark closed the door behind me and leaned against it for a second, like he was trying to decide what to do next. I stood there awkwardly in the hallway, the air between us thick and unspoken. He wasn't looking at me, not directly, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the same kind of tight restraint he'd had that night. Except now, there was no excuse, no storm, no late-night sleepover mishap. Just us. "I didn't really leave my charger, did I?" I asked. He smiled, faintly. "No, you didn't." That was all it took. The quiet snapped between us. And then he was walking toward me. He didn't kiss me right away. Just stepped close. So close I could feel the heat of his body again, and cupped my face like he was checking to make sure I was real. His eyes were sharp and searching, but his hands were gentle. "You've been on my mind," he said, voice low, like he didn't trust it. "You too," I replied. No hesitation. That was when he kissed me. Not careful this time, not tentative. It was real. Full. Like he'd been holding his breath since the night I left, and now couldn't stop taking me in. His hands slid down my sides, around my waist, pulling me flush against him, and my fingers gripped the front of his shirt like I'd been needing to feel it again. There was no confusion anymore. No doubt about what this was. It wasn't just a passing thing. We didn't stop until we both needed air, and even then, he didn't let go. "You came back," he said, forehead resting against mine. "I wanted to," I told him. He exhaled, shaky now, like relief was finally sinking in. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't either," I admitted, "but I couldn't stop thinking about it, about you." We stood like that for a while, quiet, breathing each other in. I could feel his thumb brushing slow circles over my back. The tension between us wasn't frantic this time. It was warm and steady and grounded in something that felt less like curiosity and more like wanting to understand. Eventually, he pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. "You want to talk about it?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, "but maybe not right away." He nodded. "Come on." Then he took my hand, just like that, and led me back upstairs. Not to sneak around. Not to repeat what we did that night. But because sometimes, lying next to someone again means more than anything else. His room looked exactly the same. It hadn't even been a full week since that first night, but walking in now felt completely different. This time, it wasn't by accident. I wasn't stranded. I wasn't standing awkwardly at the edge of the bed while his son snored downstairs. I was here because I wanted to be. Mark let go of my hand once we stepped inside, but the closeness didn't fade. He moved to the bed, sat down on the edge, and looked up at me. Not tense, not nervous, just waiting. I joined him. We sat in silence for a minute, not awkward, just full. Like we both knew this didn't need to be rushed. Like we had time. He finally spoke first. "I didn't expect to feel this way." "Neither did I said quietly. He nodded. "It's not about age, or who you are to my son. It's just you." That hit somewhere deep. I looked over at him. "I know, I get it." Another pause. Then, "Have you ever done anything like this?" he asked cautiously. I shook my head. "Not like this, not where it felt like this." He exhaled, and I could see something settle in his shoulders, like hearing that mattered more than he wanted to admit. His hand found mine again, fingers lacing together. "I don't want to mess this up," he said. "You haven't." He looked down at our joined hands, then back up at me. Even if this doesn't go anywhere, it meant something to me. That night. You did. I swallowed hard. Same. There were still 100 questions hanging between us about what this was, what it meant, what came next. But none of them felt urgent anymore. Right now, all that mattered was this bed, this moment, and the fact that we both showed up for it. He leaned over and kissed me again, softer this time, like sealing the quiet understanding we'd just shared. I kissed him back, steady and slow, the kind of kiss that didn't need to lead to anything else to feel complete. We didn't fall asleep right away. We lay there for a long time, side by side, our fingers brushing, our knees touching under the covers. And for the first time in what felt like years, I felt like I could breathe without second-guessing myself. In the dark, Mark whispered, "I don't regret it." "Me neither," I said. And when I woke up the next morning, the sun slipping through the curtains, his arm was still around me, still holding me, like nothing had changed. But everything had.